February 23, 1945. Iwo Jima. While photographers captured 6 Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi, creating the most famous image of World War II, 500 yards away, a drama even more desperate was unfolding in the volcanic sand. No cameras recorded it, no iconic photograph resulted. But what happened there would save hundreds of American lives. Hershel Woody Williams stood just 5 feet 6 inches tall, the same height that had gotten him rejected by the Marine Corps recruiters. Too short, they said. Not Marine material. He didn't meet the minimum height requirement. 2 inches made all the difference between serving his country and being sent home. But there he was, running alone across black sand toward concrete Japanese pillboxes that had stopped the entire American advance. In his hands, a 70-pound flamethrower, half his body weight. Behind him, 4 Marine riflemen. That was all the cover he had. What happened next would take 4 hours. 4 hours of Woody Williams, the Marine who wasn't supposed to be tall enough to serve, attacking 7 fortified enemy positions, alone, repeatedly running back through machine gun fire to reload his weapon, repeatedly charging forward with flames that could reach the bunkers the Japanese thought were untouchable. The Marine Corps told him he was too short to serve. The Japanese on Iwo Jima learned that height doesn't measure courage. This is the story of the smallest Marine who became the biggest hero of the Pacific War. Hershel Woodrow Williams grew up in Quiet Dell, West Virginia. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, he was just 20 years old, working as a taxi driver. He wanted to be a Marine. The Marines didn't want him. 5 feet 6 inches, 2 inches too short. Marine Corps regulations were clear. He didn't meet the minimum height requirement. Application denied. Woody tried the Navy. Rejected. He tried the Army. Too short. Every branch of service turned him away. He was willing to die for his country, but his country's military said he wasn't tall enough to try. Then, in May 1943, his draft notice arrived. The military still needed men. Height requirements were quietly relaxed. Woody Williams was going to war after all, and he insisted on the Marines. By February 1945, Woody's unit, C Company, 1st Battalion, 21st Marines, was landing on Iwo Jima. The island was 8 square miles of volcanic rock and ash. The Japanese had turned it into a fortress. 1,500 concrete bunkers and pillboxes, 11 miles of tunnels connecting defensive positions, 21,000 Japanese defenders who had orders to kill 10 Americans each before dying themselves. The Japanese commander, General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, had prepared for months. Every approach was covered. Every position was reinforced. 4 days into the battle, the Marines were dying by the hundreds. Japanese pillboxes with interconnected fields of fire had created a killing zone. Tanks couldn't get close. Artillery couldn't penetrate the reinforced concrete. Grenades were useless. The entire American advance had stopped dead. Someone needed to get close enough with a weapon that could reach inside those bunkers. Someone small enough, fast enough, and brave enough to do the impossible. The Marines had flamethrowers, 70 pounds of fuel tanks and firing mechanism. Range, about 30 yards. To use one effectively against a pillbox, you had to get within 20 yards, close enough to be killed by any weapon the enemy had. When Woody's company commander asked for volunteers, Hershel Williams stepped forward. He was one of the smallest men in the unit. The flamethrower weighed 70 pounds, half his body weight. It didn't matter. He'd been too short to serve. Now he'd be just the right size to get underneath the machine gun fire. February 23, 1945. The same day the flag was raised on Mount Suribachi. 500 yards away, Woody's company faced 7 concrete pillboxes arranged in a mutually supporting defensive position. Each bunker could cover the others with interlocking machine gun fire. It was a perfect killing ground. The plan was insane. Woody would advance alone with the flamethrower. 4 riflemen would provide covering fire, trying to keep the Japanese from shooting him as he ran forward. Once he destroyed a pillbox, he'd have to run back through the same fire to reload. Then do it again, and again, until all 7 bunkers were destroyed. No one had ever attempted anything like this. The tactical manuals didn't cover solo assaults on multiple fortified positions. Woody understood the mathematics. 7 pillboxes. Each reload would take several minutes in the open. He'd be the primary target for every Japanese soldier who could see him. The average life expectancy of a flamethrower operator in combat was measured in minutes. He checked his equipment one final time. 70 pounds on a 5'6" frame. The fuel mixture was napalm-based, designed to stick to whatever it touched and burn at over 1,000 degrees. The rejected recruit was about to become a legend. Woody's preparation had begun weeks earlier. Training with the flamethrower was brutal. You had to learn how to move with 70 pounds strapped to your back. How to aim a weapon that shot liquid fire in a stream, not a bullet in a line. How to judge distance when 30 yards was your maximum range and 20 yards was your effective killing distance. He studied Japanese defensive positions. Every pillbox had firing ports for machine guns. Most had multiple openings for interlocking fields of fire, but they also needed ventilation. Those openings were vulnerabilities. If you could get close enough to shoot flames through a firing port or ventilation shaft, the fire would spread inside. The heat would be unbearable. The smoke would be suffocating. The morning briefing on February 23rd was short. Intelligence had identified 7 pillboxes blocking the advance. They were arranged in a semicircle, each positioned to cover the approaches to the others. Conventional weapons had failed. The flamethrower was the last option. Woody performed his pre-combat checks with the precision of a ritual. Fuel pressure, good. Igniter, working. Straps, secure. He knew that once he started, there would be no time for equipment failure. The flamethrower had to work perfectly every single time he pulled the trigger. His covering team took their positions. 4 Marines with M1 Garands. Their job was to shoot at the pillbox firing ports, trying to suppress the Japanese gunners long enough for Woody to advance. It wasn't much protection, but it was all they had. The first pillbox was 50 yards away. Woody would have to cover 30 yards in the open before he was even in range. Then he'd need to get to 20 yards for an effective shot. All while Japanese machine guns fired at him. At 9:30 a.m., Woody Williams stepped forward and began running toward the enemy. The first run was the worst. Woody sprinted across open ground carrying 70 pounds while machine gun fire tore up the volcanic sand around him. The Japanese gunners in the pillbox were shooting directly at him. Behind him, his 4 riflemen were firing as fast as they could reload, trying to keep the enemy's heads down. 20 yards. Close enough. Woody rose up and unleashed the flamethrower. A 30-foot stream of liquid fire shot through the pillbox firing port. Inside the concrete bunker, hell arrived. The napalm stuck to everything. Walls, equipment, flesh. The heat was over 1,000 degrees. The smoke was toxic. 4 seconds of flame. That's all it took to neutralize the first pillbox. But Woody's fuel was already low. He had to run back to his lines through the same killing ground to reload. 3 minutes to reload. Strap on new fuel tanks, check connections, test igniter, then run forward again. The Japanese now knew exactly what he was doing. They would be ready. Pillbox number 2. This time the Japanese were waiting. Machine gun fire came from 3 directions. Woody zigzagged through the incoming rounds, using every depression in the ground for momentary cover. 25 yards. 20 yards. Flame burst. For 4 hours, Woody Williams repeated this impossible cycle. Run forward under fire. Destroy a pillbox. Run back. Reload. Attack again. Pillbox 3. Pillbox 4. Each time, the Japanese adjusted their defenses. Each time, Woody adjusted his approach. Different angles, different timing, always moving, always attacking. The 7th pillbox was the last. By now, Woody had been running and fighting for 4 hours. He'd made over a dozen trips across ground covered by enemy fire. His uniform was torn. His hands were blistered from the flamethrower's heat. He was beyond exhaustion. But when he unleashed flame into that final bunker, the entire defensive position collapsed. 7 pillboxes destroyed. 1 Marine, 4 hours. When the 7 pillboxes fell, the Japanese defensive line collapsed. Marines who had been pinned down for hours could finally advance. The position that had cost so many lives was broken. Woody Williams, the Marine who was too short to serve, had cleared the way. Woody was unhurt, physically. Dozens of Marines had watched him make run after impossible run through machine gun fire. The statistical probability of his survival was essentially 0. But there he sat, covered in soot and ash, with nothing worse than blistered hands and exhaustion. His company commander recommended him for the Medal of Honor immediately. The after-action reports documented everything. 7 fortified positions destroyed, countless enemy casualties, hundreds of Marine lives saved by breaking the defensive line. The Marine Corps medical estimates suggested that Woody's actions prevented casualties that could have numbered in the thousands if the battle for that position had continued. February 23, 1945 became famous for the flag raising on Mount Suribachi. That photograph became the iconic image of the Pacific War. 500 yards away, Woody Williams was fighting his 4-hour solo battle. No photographers captured it. No famous image resulted. Just the official reports and the testimony of the Marines who were there. On October 5, 1945, 7 months after Iwo Jima, President Harry Truman presented Hershel Woodrow Williams with the Medal of Honor. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty." It described his 4 hours of combat in clinical military language. But the words couldn't capture what it meant to be that small Marine, running again and again into certain death and somehow surviving. The Marines who advanced through the position Woody cleared understood perfectly. They were alive because a man who was too short to be a Marine refused to accept what was impossible. Woody Williams came home from the war. He married his sweetheart Ruby. He worked for the Veterans Administration for 33 years, helping other veterans navigate the system, get their benefits, rebuild their lives. He never considered himself special. He'd just done his job, he said. His job happened to be attacking 7 fortified enemy positions alone with a flamethrower. But Woody understood something about service and sacrifice. He knew the families who lost loved ones in war needed recognition. Starting in the 1990s, he began a personal mission to establish Gold Star families' memorial monuments across America. Memorials dedicated to families who lost loved ones in military service. By the time of his death, he had helped establish 77 of these monuments in 48 states. As decades passed, Woody Williams watched his fellow World War II Medal of Honor recipients pass away. One by one, the men who had performed similar acts of impossible courage grew old and died. By 2020, Woody was the last living recipient from the Second World War, the last connection to that generation's extraordinary sacrifice. On June 29, 2022, at the age of 98, Hershel Woody Williams died at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Huntington, West Virginia. The nation he had served for 4 desperate hours on a volcanic island 77 years earlier mourned his passing. He was given a state funeral with full military honors. Hundreds of veterans attended. The American flag flew at half-staff. The Marine Corps, which once told him he was too short to serve, gave him a send-off reserved for heroes. The Marine Corps minimum height requirement in 1943 was 5 feet, 8 inches. Hershel Williams was 5 feet, 6 inches, 2 inches too short. Those 2 inches almost prevented one of the most extraordinary acts of valor in American military history. Sometimes the measure of a man has nothing to do with his height. Sometimes it's measured in 4 hours on a volcanic island, in 7 destroyed pillboxes, in hundreds of lives saved, and in 77 years of serving his fellow veterans. Hershel Woody Williams proved that the biggest heroes sometimes come in the smallest packages.